everybody, welcome to Mox Cube. Today we are going to talk about 20 cards from Strixhaven that I am considering for cube play, and we will discuss them a little bit. So we will start with Elite Spellbinder. For 2 and a white, you get a flying 3/1 human cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you get to look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. So, I haven't decided yet if I'm going to put this one in my cube, but I thought it was an interesting card. It taxes a single card you can pick from your opponent's hand, so you know it's something that they have and are looking to play, and you can just pick any card from their hand and tax that specific card. I don't know if that's better than some of the other tax cards that are already in the cube, but it's definitely an interesting option to look at. Next we have multiple choice for blue and X. It's a sorcery. If X is 1, scry 1 and then draw a card. If X is 2, you may choose a player. They return a creature they control to its owner's hand. If X is 3, create a 4/4 blue and red elemental creature token. If X is 4 or more, do all of the above. Versatility is always key in cube. I feel like the X is 2 part where the opponent gets to choose what they return to their hand is the part that kills it for me. I feel like it's just on the verge of being really awesome, and I don't know if I don't think I'm going to play it in my cube, but I'm not saying it's not a good card. It is a good card, but in my powered cube, it probably just doesn't quite make the cut. Next, we have Reject, an instant for 1 and a blue. Counter target creature or planeswalker spell unless its controller pays 3. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So, like Mana Leak, this is going to counter what it's aiming to counter most of the time. Definitely in the early game. But if you get to late game where people have extra mana, this card becomes useless pretty quick. So, where Mana Leak can target anything, and this one being restricted to just creatures and planeswalkers, I think I'd rather stick with hard counters. But it's not terrible. You can try it, maybe even in your pauper cube, but I do think there's better options. So I know I just realized I've presented 3 cards in a row and turned them all down for my own cube, but that doesn't mean you have to turn them down for yours. Feel free to try these out. That's why I'm talking about them. I think they are worth giving a shot if you have the space to try them out in your cube. So hopefully here we'll have, here's one I like. Okay, so Baleful Mastery for 3 and black. It's an instant. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Or you may pay 1 and a black rather than pay the mana cost, and you can exile target creature and your opponent draws a card. I think this might actually replace Hero's Downfall in my cube, maybe. I like that you can, for 2 mana, get rid of a threat, because sometimes 3 mana just feels like a little too much, and in a pinch, 1 and a black and letting your opponent draw a card will get rid of a really powerful creature or planeswalker that you just have to get rid of. And like maybe you can hold up 2 mana for your opponent's turn for that, just in case you really got to get rid of something right away, and if it's not an emergency to get rid of it, you can wait till your turn and pay the full 4. But I think the versatility of this card is good, and I'm looking forward to trying this one. Next we have Professor Onyx, legendary planeswalker Liliana for 4 and double black. It has a static ability, Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. It comes in with 5 loyalty. For +1, you lose a life. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, put 1 of them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. -3, each opponent sacrifices a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. And -8, each opponent discards a card. If they don't, they lose 3 life. Repeat this process 6 times. So this is going to get compared to Liliana Dreadhorde General just because it's a 6-mana Liliana. Personally, I like Dreadhorde General better. And I did try that one out in my cube for a while, and eventually I cut it just because the curve in my cube is pretty low. But I think in most cubes, Liliana Dreadhorde General is the better of the two. But I think you could definitely try out Professor Onyx. It is interesting. I like that the creature they have to sacrifice is their largest creature. That is definitely a bonus. And then the Magecraft static ability is nice as well. Feel free to give this one a try and let me know what you think of it. Next, we have a card I really like and I'm looking forward to putting in my cube, Sedgemore Witch. For 2 and a black, you have a human Warlock that's a 3/2 with Menace. It has Ward, pay 3 life. That means when your opponent targets it with a spell or an ability, the ability or spell gets countered unless they pay 3 life. Just make sure if you're running counter magic, you make sure you let that Ward ability resolve first and make them pay that 3 life before you try to counter their spell, because if you counter it, then they won't pay the 3 life. So yeah, just remember that trigger and let that resolve first before doing anything else. But it also has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 black and green pest creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So it reminds me a lot of like Monastery Mentor or Young Pyromancer, where when you're playing spells, you get an additional creature. And I thought that was really interesting for black to get. So I definitely am looking forward to playing this card. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. This might be a good one for pauper cubes. Unwilling Ingredient is a 1/1 menace for a single black. It's a frog. 1/1 menace is just like really annoying because you never want to waste 2 creatures blocking a 1/1. So it's just going to get in for damage turn after turn after turn. And starting on turn, if you drop this thing turn 1, like it's easily going to get in 3 attacks before your opponent's finally like, all right, let's just get rid of this thing. And then once they do get rid of it, you can pay its other ability for 2 and a black and exile it from your graveyard and draw a card and lose a life. So yeah, it's just real annoying to deal with on the table just because it's so small and people don't want to waste their blocks on it. But once it does die, you replace it with another card, and I thought that was kind of neat. Yeah, so look out for that one. It might be a good pauper staple for cubes. Moving on to Conspiracy Theorist. A 2/2 human shaman for 1 and a red. Whenever a Conspiracy Theorist attacks, you may pay 1 and discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Whenever you discard 1 or more non-land cards, you may exile 1 of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may cast it this turn. Yeah, basically, it's almost like you're giving that card you discard a madness cost almost, because you're allowed to cast it for its mana cost that turn. So kind of a neat little card. I'll probably try this one out. We'll have to see. I'll have to go through my red and see how tight things are and see if I have room for it. But I thought this one was worth mentioning. Emergent Sequence for 1 and a green sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. That land becomes a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature that is still a land. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each land you had enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So, if you already played your land for turn and then play this, it'll come in as a 2/2. If you happen to play your land and it was a fetch land and you fetch, go get another land, and then do this, it'll come in as a 3/3. I'm not a huge fan of creature lands that are just always creatures and easy to kill, because that invites people to kill your lands. But the fact that you're ramping to get it is helpful, and it feels less bad if somebody just kills it right away with their creature removal spell, because, hey, let's face it, they're killing like a 2/2 or a 3/3 and not killing something amazing. So yeah, 2 mana ramp is good for cube. I've actually cut like all 3 mana ramp, like Kadama's Reach, Cultivate, all that stuff's gone in my cube. All my ramp is 2 mana. So this is another option for a 2 mana ramp spell that I think is definitely playable. And hey, late game, it's a creature if you don't need the land at late game, which that's more useful than most ramp spells in the late game. Decisive Denial for green and blue. Instant. Choose 1. Target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Or counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. Options are always nice. If you get to a point in the game where you can't use the counterpart to counter a non-creature spell because they have too much mana, then you can always still use the fight ability. Next we have Fracture. For white and black, it's an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. This is going to be a recurring theme here as we go to more of the multicolor cards, but options in cube are always like A+. Like, you want options. And yeah, having 3 different options for this card is fantastic. So I would give this card an A+, and recommend running it. Killian, Ink Duelist, white, black, for a legendary creature, human warlock. It's a 2/2 with lifelink and menace. Spells you cast that target a creature cost 2 less to cast. So this is another case of a small menace creature, just kind of annoying to block and get rid of. This one, however, has lifelink as well, which is nice, and it allows you to play your removal spells for 2 less. So if you have room in white-black, it might be worth checking out. Prismari Command. 1 blue and red. For an instant, choose 2. Prismari Command deals 2 damage to any target. Target player draws 2 cards, then discards 2 cards. Target player creates a treasure token or destroy target artifact. So, like I said, options are fantastic in cube, and this one, it has 2 different options for like killing targets. You can get rid of artifact, or like hit a creature or a planeswalker or a player. Lets you loot 2, lets you create a treasure token. That's probably the one that's not going to get used nearly as much, but it's still an option. Great new red-blue card for cubes. Rip Apart. Now, I was very happy to see that red-white is finally getting some great cards for cube. Red-white has always been the weakest color for cards in cube, and I go fairly heavy in my multicolor. I try to keep it all even. I do keep it all even as far as the 2 colors go. I have a 720 card cube, and 100 of those cards are dedicated to 2 color cards. So that's pretty heavy for me. I have 10 from each guild. But red-white has always been the weakest. So Rip Apart, for red and a white, you have a sorcery to choose 1. Rip Apart deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Now, while it looks like it only has 2 options, that's actually 4 options there. You get to either hit a creature, hit a planeswalker, kill an artifact, or kill an enchantment. 4 options, 2 mana, great. I'm going to be putting this in my cube. Thrilling Discovery. Okay, not quite as good as the last red-white card, but still an interesting option. For red and white sorcery, you gain 2 life, then you may discard 2 cards, and if you do, draw 3 cards. So you exchange 3 cards, including the one you're playing, for 3 other cards and gain 2 life. Probably won't put this in my cube, but I thought it was interesting enough to mention. Vanishing Verse. We have an instant for white and black. Exile target monocolored permanent. So, yeah, this will highly depend on your ratio of monocolored cards versus multicolored cards in your cube. This one probably isn't as good in my cube as it is in most people's cube because I go really heavy in multicolor, but it is an excellent card, especially because it hits permanents. Remind me a lot of Ultimate Price. Destroy target monocolored creature. This one hits monocolored permanents and it exiles it. I recommend this card highly. The Narrable War Singer. It is a Spirit Cleric 3/3 for 1 red and white with Vigilance and Trample. Whenever War Singer deals combat damage to a player, you may return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the amount of damage it dealt to that player. Vigilance and Trample 3/3 for 3, already great. That wall of text where you get to return something, just bonus. Slap a sword on that thing and gonna really be cooking. I like this card. Red white is weak in cube, and this is a great card to put in. Witherbloom Command. For black and green, it's a sorcery. Choose 2. Target player mills 3 cards, and then you return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. Destroy target non-creature, non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Target creature gets -3/-1 until end of turn. Target opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life. Like I said before, options are great in cube. If you've got room to run this, great. If not, it's okay. There's so much good green-black removal. This one probably is a little lower on the list just because it's a sorcery, but definitely a decent card and worth considering if you want some different options. Environmental Sciences, too generic. This is a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle, and you gain 2 life. I mentioned to my friend, I thought it was kind of funny how if I put this in the cube, I bet people would draft it because it's color fixing outside of green. And I was like, but if I put in something that had was like a 5/5 for 6 with basic land cycling 2, nobody would draft it, or it would get drafted at the end just because people were like, 5/5 for 6, this thing's awful. But it has the basic land cycling and does the same thing this card does, minus the 2 life gain. But it has an alternate use. And I feel like this would get picked first because people wouldn't, they would just overlook the bad creature that the 5/5 for 6 is and not see it as a option. So I thought this was just kind of funny. It'd be an interesting experiment to put something like that in the cube alongside this and see what people draft first. I'm not saying this is a must include in your cube, but it's kind of whatever. It's not that great. There's other things that are better. Zephyr Boots, or Loot Boots, as I'm going to call them. For a single mana, we have an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has flying. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card, hence the Loot Boots part. And equip cost is 2. I always felt like cheap equipment that give your creatures flying was just always really good, because just putting a giant creature on wings just tends to end games. So it might be worth a try to put this in. I'm not saying this card is amazing, but it might be a good solid card to help end games. I believe that is it for my list. So let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe and share with your cube playing friends, and enjoy checking out Strixhaven.